Hello, and welcome to the Dissident Daughters podcast. I'm your host, Ada, and I'm here deconstructing my Mormon faith and making space for other women, like me, to do the same. A dissident daughter is someone who actively challenges an established political or religious system, a doctrine, belief, policy, or institution. So that's my purpose in starting this podcast and why I wanted to have a space specifically for women to speak out and speak up. I'm glad you're here. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. This is Ada, and I have Sarah with me again. And we have just become, besties, right? Like,
Yep. My family calls you my bestie from the Westie.
And today, Sarah's here to talk about something a little lighter and not so serious, but we love having you on to talk about all the Native American stuff and Lamanite truth and all of that. We love that. But Sarah came to me. I think you suggested this idea. You said, let's talk about why we're never going back to the church. And my immediate thought was to start singing Taylor Swift. I posted a meme once on my Dissident Daughters Instagram. It's Taylor Swift with the church, like the church logo, and then it says like, we are never getting back together. Like, ever. It's my favorite thing. And then I found out Sarah's a Taylor Swift fan too. So
Yep, she got me.
it's so good. I'm actually going to see Taylor this weekend with my daughter. Yeah, my daughter is obsessed with Taylor. We're going to Las Vegas to see her in Vegas. She is one of my all-time favorites. It's only been in the last few years that I've really admitted to it.
I don't know why that's the case so often, like with her. Just some of the songs are fun. And I think some of my love for her is actually because of my daughters too. I have 3 daughters, and we've all sang Taylor Swift songs together in the car. So
yep. That makes it fun when like the whole family can sing it together. So anyways, just all of that to say that we are never getting back together with the church. And there are many reasons why. So I don't know if you want to start with one or if you want me to start with one.
I have one.
Okay.
Like there's my number one, like first one that always comes to my mind.
Yeah.
And it was, I will never, ever wear garments again. Ever. And it's not just because of how incredibly uncomfortable they are and how they turn pregnancies into a living hell. And fashion is very frustrating to comfortably wear them under any kind of clothes. Like it isn't even just about like having to wear sleeves all the time, but just so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But when I was still a member, but I was deconstructing, I got to this point where I was like, was Joseph a fallen prophet? Like, was everything true up to this point? And because I had learned about how polygamy was connected to the garments, how they were a symbol for polygamous men to enter the temple.
Yeah, initially the garments were only worn by those who had entered into polygamy.
Yep.
And because it was a way for them to be able to find each other. Like, garments, he's a polygamist, so he's safe to talk to or whatever by the other men, right?
Yeah.
Such a bizarre, I learned that after I had already left, but yes.
Yeah, and like 3 years prior to me learning that, I had been like praying, and I just had this feeling that polygamy was wrong. And for me, like I look back and I'm like, well, was that like me telling myself that? I'm like, it doesn't matter. In the moment, it just felt really wrong. Yeah. And it always has to me.
Yeah, me too.
And so when I learned how it was tied to polygamy as a believing member, I couldn't wear my garments after that. And so I took them off, and for 3 days, I wore workout clothes and I kept working out. And then at night, I couldn't put them back on. Like I would take a shower and put new workout clothes on. And I was like, oh, I'm going to work out one more time. I would tell my husband I was going to work out and then just pretend to fall asleep. Like, asleep. It's so childish, right? Like, oh, I fell asleep. I couldn't put them back on. And yeah,
Oh,
so that's
yes.
one of mine. Never,
Yeah.
never.
So you were still believing when you found that out. And
Yeah.
how did you separate were you like, okay, garments and polygamy are wrong, but the church is still true? Or were you
I wouldn't say, well, yeah, I think I told you how I started by wanting to be a better mom. And so I'd go to byu.org and look up like historians' papers because I just wanted to know everything.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the ex-Mormon world, really. I didn't know about the podcast,
Yeah.
which I was shocked and overwhelmed by the historian papers, which led me to just focusing on lesson manuals because I wanted to strengthen my testimony. And I started following sources. And the sources led to the same place the historians used. And a lot of times that was Journal of Discourse.
Yep.
And so seeing Utah Mormonism versus the early Mormonism, I was like, well, maybe Joseph was a fallen prophet and everything went sideways at this point. So I wasn't 100% sure at first, that I was still like trying to save the Book of Mormon and understanding that these were all, how the church is like, are they speaking as a man or speaking as a prophet? I started to understand that, oh, they were speaking as men, like all the time.
Always.
Always. And so I thought maybe Joseph had bad influences that came into his life.
Oh, like, interesting. Yeah.
And that was me attempting to save everything.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I kind of did the same thing, but I did it to Brigham Young. So Joseph was like, he was my guy. Like I had so much love and respect for Joseph Smith that I could not accept like the things that he did wrong. I would just literally like dismiss them, pretend they didn't exist. If I learned something, I would be like, oh, I'm sure that's false, or I'm sure I haven't heard the whole story. I'm sure there's something missing there. But then I would look at Brigham Young and be like, he was the problem. Brigham Young was the problem because I did not want to blame it on Joseph Smith. So I'm like, Brigham Young was a fallen prophet. Brigham Young screwed everything up. Da, 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 da. But then we got back on track because the current prophet is great.
Yeah, I did the same thing with Brigham. I blamed Brigham for some of Joseph being a fallen prophet.
Yeah.
Because everything started to go sideways when all these new people
entered. Brigham Young came along.
Yeah. Well, and there's some other ones, but he was a big one. Yeah. But my husband was like you. Like he couldn't look at Joseph and not protect that belief in him until he saw the rock in the hat.
That was the thing.
What? That was the thing. Because all growing up, we were taught Urim and Thummim and
And now there is an apologist girl who is saying that the rock and the hat thing never happened. And she's
sad.
She's an apologist for the church. And literally, like Rusty Nelson stuck his head in a hat and said, yeah, this is the way Joseph Smith did it. So everybody in the church is accepting that is truth, but this one girl is like on this rampage to
try to save her own testimony, basically.
Yeah, to say that it's all wrong. Like the treasure digging, the rock and the hat stuff. Yeah, none of it actually happened. Is her name Haley Stoddard, I think? Have you heard of her? I don't know.
I think I saw like a TikTok or something on her, but I don't know the name.
Yeah. Anyway.
But I stopped and I was like, what? And then scroll on.
You're like, how can you believe something different than everyone else in the church accepts that that's true? Like it's not just an anti-Mormon lie. Like anyways. So the rocket is the reason your husband is never getting back together with the church.
Yeah. One of many reasons.
One of many. Oh yes. There is so many. We probably can never get to all of them, but
yeah. So what's one of yours?
Let's see.
Garments. What's something of yours?
So it seems like they're all connected, right? I don't think they are redeemable. There's been too many problems. There's too many apologies that need to be made. Too many changes. I just don't think it's possible for them to become something completely different from what they are now as an institution, as a system, as a church. Like, I just think they're not redeemable. And apparently that means I don't believe in the atonement, which I don't. Like, I don't think that they can ever come back from how far off course they are in terms of actually following Jesus' teachings, in terms of, actually being fair and honest in their dealings with their fellow man, all of those types of things. Like, literally all the things that I learned in the church, and like the reason why, like my sense of, integrity and honesty is pretty strong. And I think I learned that in the church, but it's such a weird thing when like the church doesn't follow that at all. They teach it, but for whatever reason, they don't have to follow that teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that one. Like, you remember in part 2 of my list of expectations for the church to heal the lame myth, I know I said in it something to the effect of they could earn my respect if they start doing these things. But it's almost not fair to them, because for them to earn my respect, by the time they were done correcting the problems, the church would not exist.
Yeah.
Like, it would be a completely different organization.
Yeah. So therefore they really can't earn your respect without completely.
Well, they could if they decided to undo everything.
Yeah, if they dismantle the
why I said
entire.
It's not fair. Yeah, they'd have to dismantle all the money issues, which are so dishonest, and the LGBTQ problems, and yeah, like, by the time they'd be done, it wouldn't be the same organization. So I can say, yeah, they could earn my respect, but in a way they can't.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, yeah, I completely agree with why that being like one of your number ones on why you're not ever getting back together with them.
Yes. Yes.
You're like, not redeemable.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? I've heard people say that they think that it's possible for the church to change their policy about LGBTQ people in the same way that they changed their policy on Blacks in the priesthood. That it's they kind of draw a parallel between those two major changes. What are your thoughts about that? I'd be very curious.
I don't think it's realistic. I think people are wishful thinking there. They'll pull back on racism because they don't have any support for it worldwide.
Wouldn't that be also the same with LGBTQ? Won't there be a point where, if they do not 100% like embrace and allow them to get married in their temples and stuff, do you think that they would get enough social pressure to change that?
How many churches do you know that support racism?
None.
How many churches do you know that support only marriage between a man and a woman?
I don't know.
Maybe. A lot more.
Yeah, a lot more.
So when it comes to just looking at religion itself,
yeah,
excluding all the other social stuff, just religions around the world, they have the support to stay things the same. I can see why people hope and wish for it to change, and that there could be change, and they could surprise us, but I don't see it ever happening.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wouldn't be anytime soon, because I think you're right. Like, if other religions start to walk back that thing, if they all start to embrace, which I think there are many churches that do embrace gay people, that even have gay pastors and stuff. But the majority of them, you're right, like that it would have to be generations of change, which it won't happen in our lifetime if it ever does.
It's like asking them to give up the excessive amounts of money hoarding.
Ugh.
That's on the same level. It's just not going to happen. If they do everything that we expect for them to be redeemable, it won't be the same church.
Yeah, that's totally true.
And even with them walking back racism, it's almost more in word at times, because
it's still in their scripture.
How can you say, oh, we were Well, and they don't even fully walk it back. They say, "Oh God, it just wasn't time yet."
Totally.
They don't say that it was wrong that it happened to begin with. So it's still like, "Oh, it was meant you guys were meant to wait for the
Yeah,
priest."
they point the finger at God. They say that was God's plan.
Yeah.
That was God's fault. It was God's.
Yep. Yep. So it's not a different church even with that.
Yeah. Like we
The
didn't
same church.
wrong. We were just following God.
Yep.
Ugh, gross.
So not redeemable is one of yours.
Yes, absolutely.
I think my next one
Mhm.
is, and I think I've shared with you some of my frustration over how boys get damaged in the church.
Yes. Yes.
And just because of the massive amount of pressure that they have to like conform and perform, and how that just sets the tone for their entire lives. Like, I was the mom, and this was before my like crisis of complete fall of my testimony stuff, but my son never had to serve a mission, and I was like not like everyone in that way. There was zero expectations or pressure for mission.
Yeah.
Um,
You specifically told your son you don't have to serve a mission if you don't.
yeah.
Yeah.
And well, because he had expressed once, he was like, "I don't want to serve a mission. Do I have to serve a mission?" I was like, "Nope." And I didn't even think about it. It just automatically popped out, and I was like, "Huh, that didn't bother me." So apparently,
Yeah.
like those fast moments of parenting where you just
Mhm.
react, and I was surprised by my reaction, but
Yeah.
then I was like, "Yeah, that it's his life, and I want to support him, and that doesn't define his spiritual growth or spiritual possibilities." Or, I knew plenty of people that hadn't served a mission. So,
Yes.
yeah, I don't like
And on the other side of that coin, I knew plenty of assholes that did serve missions that were terrible husbands, terrible fathers, terrible human beings in general. Like I had multiple enough experiences with return missionaries that I genuinely was like, nope, that is not the baseline of what I'm going to tell like my girls, like you have to marry a return missionary, because that's a thing. Like a lot of girls and young women, I would hear it all the time. Girls say, you know how they always make the lists of like the qualities they want in a man when they get married, because that's the only thing that they're good for is getting married. But yeah, that's like at the top of their list, return missionary. And I'm like, wait a second, I would always call that out. I would say just because someone didn't serve a mission does not make them unmarriable. Or
yeah, because there's almost this assumption that if he's a return missionary, I've got a good guy.
yes,
And because it was on my list.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
thankfully, like I had enough experiences with return missionaries that were terrible humans that I was like, huh. So I could see, oh, a mission doesn't save someone. If they're an asshole, they're an asshole. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I kind of had the same, like, I definitely think I encouraged my son when we would talk about it. Like, yeah, you should go on a mission, but I was never going to like major pressure him or push that on him. And I never felt like my daughters had to marry return missionaries. I just didn't have that. Also, all three members of the first presidency currently, none of them served missions.
Yeah, and kind of with that, like girls go through their own version of the same type of pressures and conformity, and it's all marriage and kids. And I was, I think that kind of sums up my second reason of never getting back together, because once I saw how trapping, like just how small the box was that I'd have to shove my kids into.
Yes.
For me personally, it was small.
Yep.
When I started to understand and view it differently. And I just, never getting back together.
Yeah.
Like if they at like 25 are like, "Mom, I'm going to join the church." I'll be like, "All right, I'll support you, but I just want you to know these things."
Mm-hmm.
And to also view it as, what are your kids going to go through? Like go in knowing everything.
And I genuinely believe that if somebody knows all the things, they are not joining that church. Like
no.
Nobody's doing it, which is because my mom said the same thing to me once. She said, what if your kids want to join the church when they're adults? And I was like, I had to think about it for a minute because my initial reaction was like, no, hell no, they're not doing that. But then I'm like, well, wait a second. Okay. I was like, I would let them, but I would just make sure they knew all the things. And then I kind of laugh and I'm like, they're not joining if they know all the things. What's gonna happen?
No, but it would be up to them. Like the whole informed consent. Yep.
Yeah, they would know exactly what they were getting into. And therefore, I have no worries that they're going to join the church. No concerns whatsoever. Yep. So I love what you said about your son and, you know, the pressure and all of that. And I seriously think maybe we should do a whole episode on this because we've talked about this before. And I know you feel really strongly about it. And it was like probably the first big thing on your shelf was the whole like patriarchy and how it harms men and boys. And that's a huge, huge problem for me as well. But I love particularly how much it affected you as soon as you became a boy mama. Like as soon as you had your son, you were like, wait a second, you know? Whereas like for me, I feel like I didn't fully have that experience. I wish I could say that I felt that way, but in my brain, I was still very tied to patriarchy and like, this is what my son's going to be, you know? And I more saw it when it came to my daughters. And that's what started to break down mine more than, but the more I've dug into it, the more I see how much harm the patriarchy does to men.
Yeah, it took me a while because when I originally started digging, I was pregnant with my fourth child, third girl, you know, my oldest was just baptized. So she was 8 when I had my new baby. Okay. And that's when I was on bed rest with my fourth. And that's when I started researching. I was like, oh, I'm going to research polygamy and like just get to a peaceful place where I don't have to have answers, but I want to just be able to help my girls have support and understanding and, you know, just anything to help them cope with such a hard teaching, right? And so I wasn't looking for God to teach me everything about polygamy. You know, I was just wanting peace over it.
Yeah.
Like, and I kept praying for peace. And I would read all this stuff on BYU.org, and I came across that boy who got forcibly castrated.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at my son and I flipped out. And that's what switched me to viewing polygamy through a boy's eyes. And then just one thing after another, and how they're just expected to perform and pay. You know, have all these kids, provide for all these kids. You're not gonna go on your sports scholarships. You're going on a mission. You're not, what second you get home, you got to get married right away. You got to start providing for a stay-at-home mom and all the kids. And, you know, for some people, maybe that's exactly what they want. But it was just that pressure to conform. And if they didn't, they were considered a failure. Right. You know, and I think there's a different type of pressure on boys sometimes. And I'd never seen it before. So I think because I was shocked by something that I didn't see is why it became a big deal. I knew about how hard it was for girls.
Yeah.
Because I'd experienced it.
Yeah.
And I just assumed that it was easier for guys.
Yeah.
Until I started looking and until that kid that got forcibly castrated by the bishop, you know, he's like 20 years old. And the bishop wanted to marry his teenage girlfriend as his fourth wife, some old man. And it just, it horrified me.
Bishop Snow, right? Wasn't his name?
Yeah, yeah. And then they try to make it out like this kid was crazy because he ended up in a crazy house. And I was like, no, they made him crazy.
That's because they castrated him and like tied him to like a bench or something and left him there to die. And he miraculously survived. But sorry, you're not going to be normal after that. You're not going to like, they just ruined his freaking.
That's some massive trauma. Yeah.
Yeah. That was 1850s-ish time frame, maybe 1860s. I know I heard that story from Lindsay Hansen Park's podcast. What is it called? Year of Polygamy.
Yeah.
And when she got to that era, because I thought I had heard all the shit, you know, when it was, because I started at the beginning, I thought I'd heard everything by that point with all of, you know, Joseph Smith stuff. But holy shit, like the Utah period of like 1850s and 60s was an absolute shit show. And the polygamy stuff was so damaging. So yeah, that's
Even reading about like the experiences of boys in polygamous communities now, how they get kicked out and they're called lost boys. And I was just like, once I saw patriarchy and the priesthood, specifically the priesthood, through this system, and then in the Journal of Discourse, it talks about how a woman can divorce a husband for a higher priesthood power spouse.
Yep.
That it was okay if she wanted to level up her priesthood person, right? The guy. And I was just like horrified. And then learning about how Joseph Smith sent people on missions, you know,
so he could marry their wives.
Yeah. And I was like, no, and that's what kind of drove me for 3 years, where I'd be like, no, I'm gonna like put it on the shelf and just ignore it because my testimony's struggling. And then every 6 months I'd be back to digging.
Yeah.
Until the end. Yeah. When it just all came crashing down. But I could not get back together because of the toxic culture that kids are raised in.
Yes.
So it's kind of, yeah.
I have thought multiple times, like, you know, if they apologized, if they admitted their mistakes of the past, even if they admitted that the Book of Mormon was made up by Joseph, or that he never saw God or Jesus or translated anything, like I've genuinely had to like think about, okay, what if all of that past history was erased and they apologized? I know it's not really possible for it to be erased, but just if it was, if they fixed all of that somehow miraculously, at my very core, I still do not think that I could accept their current teachings and behavior today as a system, as a theology, like all of it. Their behavior as it pertains to, you know, sexual abuse cases that you're hearing about in the news all the time, their money issues, they're still teaching of, you know, purity culture and patriarchy and their LGBTQ beliefs. Like, yes, the history of the church, the history of where things started and past prophets and stuff, that was a huge, huge shelf breaker for me. And probably maybe originally the reason why I left the church. But their current stuff that's going on, their current teachings, their current beliefs, their current practices are the reason why I can never go back. Because it wouldn't, none of the past stuff even has to be there for me to not believe any of the current stuff. Am I like articulating that right? Does that make sense? It's so bad now that it doesn't even matter. All the past stuff is horrible, but it's almost like it doesn't even matter because of what's happening currently today and every day in the church.
Yep. One of the ones that I had written down of why I'd never get back together is they're way too comfortable with lying. And they can call it lying for the Lord, but my last calling was with nursery and teaching out of the manual to these like baby brains, you know? I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't even follow the manual because I knew how much of it was dishonest. And so I'd have to pick and choose what I was teaching. Because it was, there were lessons about the temple and about Joseph Smith and the way it was written. I couldn't unsee all the things I'd learned. You know, I am like trying to teach this lesson as if it's real.
Yep.
I couldn't do it. I did it one time because I was like, oh, parents want them to be taught this stuff. I just need to be respectful and teach it. And I was so sick afterwards. So my lessons changed after that. And if the lesson for that week was terrible, I just taught a lesson about like Jesus's teachings. Like I would go with like basic stuff. But you mentioned like how they handle abuse cases. And I'm like, what happens to children? Like, it's so dishonest. It's so disrespectful that, never getting back together.
We're gonna sing that song at the end of the episode. Just kidding.
Yep. It'd be terrible. Everybody be like, thanks for saving that to the end, because goodbye.
Not gonna listen to that now. Oh crap, I had a thought. What was it? I know that like I did that to a certain extent. With my teaching, I was in young women's and then I was in Sunday school. I was starting just barely scratching the surface while I was in young women's. But like I would always say that I was kind of a progressive Mormon because I very much leaned on grace and the atonement and Jesus, which is so funny that I would see that as being progressive. Like I'm leaning towards Jesus's teaching, so that's more progressive. But like I wasn't like so much about the letter of the law and things like that. And I really tried to see like some gray area, and I would talk. I remember like just focusing more on certain aspects. I don't remember like totally changing lessons or even feeling the need to necessarily, but I would just definitely focus on the things that I thought were, more loving and more graceful. Graceful? Is that the word? Gracious? But not just like hammering down on like chastity and
Yeah.
being pure and everything. It was more about like the atonement and like God's unconditional love and like you are worthy no matter what, those kinds of things I kind of lean towards, and also in Sunday school. And then when I got my very last calling before I left, I was just in activity days, so we never had to teach. We just did activities, and we never had to teach like real like religious lessons at all. And that was probably a very good thing, because yes, by that time, if I had been being required to teach stuff, I would have not done a very good job. That I probably would have gotten complaints. In fact, I did get a complaint once from a parent when I was in Sunday school, and I can't even remember what I was teaching, but it was way too progressive for this parent. She complained about me. Yeah, whatever.
Oh, there's a problem
Worst.
when you have to like alter the lessons a bit though because they're dishonest or toxic or yeah.
Yeah, that was actually the
Yeah.
thought that I had before that I forgot. That was it. It's so their dishonesty is very what I don't even know, like it's so carefully worded. They aren't like so blatantly dishonest, although they are sometimes, but like how do you describe it? It's so carefully worded. It's like lawyers write their manuals. It's like they skirt around an issue,
Mhm.
say things in a certain way that makes it sound okay, but if you really understand what you're reading, you're like, holy shit, did they just say that?
I did tell you what I call the church, right? How I renamed it.
Yes, say it again though, because I forgot.
It's kind of rude. The Church of Plausible Deniability of Latter-day Lawyers.
Exactly accurate. That's exactly.
Like everything we've talked about, it's all orchestrated and just so, yeah. And like when Russell did the video with all the kids, he and his wife, with looking in the hat and then teaching all these kids of how it happened. I I had a hard time watching it because it should have felt sweet, but it felt abusive to me. And like that was just my personal reaction to it.
It was
Was it felt
gross
dishonest and disrespectful to those little minds.
and
And I'm like,
disingenuous.
yeah, it was not treating them or teaching them with honesty to me. And yeah.
Yeah, he said
Oh,
he said in that, I think he said something about how the prophet always tells the truth,
oh.
and that
Yeah. I've
he
only
would,
seen it once and it made me
yeah,
sick. I haven't watched it again. So he
yeah,
says that he's being honest in it.
yeah. He says the prophet always speaks the truth.
Oh.
It's bad. It's
See, I wish my reasons were like, I really love margaritas. Like, can't that just be the reason? Instead of it being so heavy. But
that
it
can be
it
a
is heavy.
reason. I mean, we both
It's
like
on my
margaritas.
list. I did put margaritas on my list.
It's
Oh
a
my
good
gosh.
reason.
It's a
It's a
good
good
reason.
reason.
Oh, nothing like a good Mexican restaurant, all the spicy foods with a nice margarita. Are you
It's a
kidding
nice,
me?
yeah.
Gonna need
You know what?
tacos today.
Those are kind of like the side effects. Those aren't like the reasons why we left, but they definitely are on the list of reasons why we would never go back, right? Like,
It's actually on my list for a specific reason. I viewed people that drank coffee, people that drank alcohol as like so lost and so
as bad.
bad.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm like enjoying a margarita with friends. I'm like, seriously? Like it didn't change me. It
Right.
didn't make me less honest. It didn't make me less kind. It didn't make me, you know.
Totally.
Yeah, like I'm still the parent I've always been. I'm still, you know, like same with coffee. And yeah, I could give up coffee. I could give up alcohol. It's not a big deal, but to
you wouldn't
view it
want
as
to.
evil, yeah, to view it as bad or unrighteous or I don't know.
Yeah.
I can see saying, you know, addictions can harm families or harm kids, you know, but
Yes.
they're loud about alcohol, but not loud about abuse. Instead, they pay to cover that up. And that contrast is why margaritas is on my list. I'm like,
Totally. They are so loud about alcohol, but they don't say a word about abuse.
yeah, like put that on the recommend questions interview.
Yes.
But then like if I ever could ask the leadership a question, if they were like, you get one question, I'd be like, are you honest in your dealings? Like,
ooh, yeah.
that is my first question. Because like,
well, and they wouldn't tell you the truth.
So
they would say yes because they're not honest.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That I would love to have that question. And then to have a follow-up question of, okay, but what about when you said this? And what about when you said this?
Exactly.
This.
Because they wouldn't answer it. I don't think they'd say yes even. I think they'd not answer it.
My lawyer says I don't have to answer that question. That's what they would do. It's so bad. It's so bad. I love my coffee and I love my margaritas. I love my my Mike's hard lemonades. I love my wine. I mean, I
have a weakness for buzz balls. Have you had those?
No. What is that?
They're like little flavored wines and they're just like 6 to 8 ounces right in there. They're tiny. Albertsons usually carries them.
Yeah, Albertsons, did you say?
Yeah, that's where I usually get them.
I live in Utah, remember? We don't get...
Hey, I have friends that live there. I'll find out where they buy them because they drink them.
Okay, they're probably at the liquor store because that's the only place we can get alcohol. I mean, I guess at the grocery store they do have... They do have...
Because it's wine-based. It's not like a hard liquor, so it's...
But they don't have wine at grocery stores. I wish they did. They have beer and they have like some Mike's and you know those kinds of things, but they have wine coolers, but they don't have like actual wine. But maybe they have those. Say what the name of them is again.
Buzz balls.
Buzz balls. Buzz balls. Okay. That's a great name.
Could you say it again? You were really doing good enunciation. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna have to find those and try them. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah. Try and think of other things on my list. What else is on your list?
Oh, I know what I was gonna say about the alcohol thing and like how we think that people who smoke or drink are bad. It's all it goes along with this fear-based teaching. It's all fear. Like they make you afraid of things that are different than you or people that are different than you in all kinds of ways. And that is one of the things that I enjoy the most about not being in the church is I'm not afraid anymore. I don't think that I realized how much I was living in fear until I was out. And then I was like, oh my God, like I was in, like, if I didn't wear my garments and I drove to the grocery store, I was afraid that I was going to get in a fiery death crash and die because I didn't have my garments on to protect me. If I didn't pay my tithing, I thought I was going to lose my job. Like there was going to be some consequence, right? If I didn't obey the word of wisdom, my kid would not be born healthy or, you know, like, well, that can be true, I guess. do drugs while I'm pregnant, my kid probably will have a problem, but that has nothing to do with the church.
Oh
But do
my
you know what
gosh.
I mean? Like the
Yeah.
fear, like I was afraid for my kids, I was afraid for my marriage, I was afraid for my life, I was afraid for my home, my well-being, like all the things. I was constantly afraid that if I wasn't doing all the right things, that there would be a punishment. And all of my choices were based on rewards and punishments.
Which as an adult, that's hard enough. But then raising our children in that and having them going to a friend's house and not feeling safe because there's coffee
Yes.
on the counter. Having my children, like I was surprised when they were judging people that smoked. And I started talking to them about it. And I'm like, no, it's not healthy. So it's on our word of wisdom, but that doesn't mean those people are bad. And so I was like actively trying to push back. And my husband has like, I think he has 6 tattoos. And so when my kids got the tattoo lessons at church, I think that was actually good because they were able to be like, well, dad's good.
Yeah.
Like, and so we were able to talk about that. But my issues usually, like any issue that comes up, I'm like, how does this affect kids? Because in the adult world, we'll make all kinds of excuses and reasons or apologetics to try to make it all make sense. And I'm like, how does it affect kids?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember going home to Alaska to visit my family and not feeling good because they were drinking tea.
Oh my.
Because they were drinking non-herbal tea. It was regular tea, which was bad. Because they had coffee. My grandma drank coffee every day. And even though I still saw her as good, I'm just this kid, but I felt unsafe. So yeah, I think it's just such a weird environment.
Yeah. I totally, when you said that you think about the kids, that is a huge one for me because I once had somebody ask me, like, you're out of the church and your kids are out of the church. So why do you still get like so worked up and so upset about this issue or this issue? And like, if it doesn't affect you anymore. And I'm like, but it affects the people I love. I have lots of nieces and nephews that are still in the church. And it is this kind of shit that is still being shoved down their throats is still harmful to them. And yes, I'm so grateful my kids are out of it. But I also want my kids to understand, like when they have friends that are Mormons, this is what they're being taught. So like I try to make sure my kids are respectful, like, and not, disrespectful of other people's beliefs. But at the same time, like I get really fired up about stuff with missions. My niece that's filling out her mission papers right now, and if I had a choice, I would tell her all the truth about all the things. But then it's like, well, I also can't do that. But and then I have nephews and nieces that are getting baptized and that are just through the steps of the church, and I love them so much. I love them and I want to protect them. They're not my own children, but that doesn't mean that I don't have a protectiveness towards them. And so, yes, that's a huge problem for me, is the harm that is done to children.
And I just want to point out, you're not actively seeking out kids and telling your nieces and nephews everything bad about the church. You're not even having conversations with them about any of it.
No.
You're being respectful. You're staying distant. You're letting their parents and their families live their lives.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're not going to talk about it in your own space. So like, I don't believe I'm a Lamanite anymore.
Yeah.
But my family still identifies as Lamanite, like my active Mormon family does.
Yeah.
I'm not sending them my blog posts. I'm not sending them links to podcasts I've done. I'm not actively talking to them about any of it, Yeah. I'm not reaching out to my nieces and nephews and like, but it always surprises me when people are like, why are you still talking about it if it doesn't affect you? Who says it doesn't still affect us? That's like I talked once on the last episode about how I was abused as a kid. Can you imagine if none of us ever talked about childhood abuse. Well, it's not affecting me now. I'm 46.
It's not still
Why would I
happening,
talk
so
about
why
it?
are you still talking about it?
Yeah, I'm not affected by it. Or like racism.
Mm.
Like, what if we stopped talking about it? Or if I was like not willing to talk about the LGBTQ community. That's actually my final thing on my list, and one of the biggest ones
Yes.
is I have kids that are LGBTQ.
Mhm.
And it's not like the church isn't hurting me anymore with that, but we need a better world. It's not about the church alone. It's about wanting a better world for everyone altogether. Like,
Yeah.
it's worth talking about the issues. And that's one that just annoys the hell out of me. I'm like, oh, you want silence? Well, that just supports toxic and abusive environments.
Yep.
That's your own fears. And that's just like you talking about it, or being ex-Mormon and having left the church is like the cup of coffee on the counter at my grandma's house. You know, like
Mhm.
that fear and that feeling danger. So I get it because I was there. Even if I look back now and I'm like, I was scared of a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. This
Um,
seems so silly, but that's what we were taught. Right.
yeah, yeah. Like my aunt offered me sweet tea, and because it wasn't herbal, I felt
Mhm.
all this fear and I
Mhm.
didn't know how to say no, and I just like backed away and left. Like I was like 10. Like as if she was handing me like drugs or something. I'm like, oh,
No,
I was just,
might as
a
well have
kid.
been giving you cocaine for all we know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the same. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Gosh.
it's like that wasn't dangerous, but then if we're not allowed to talk about the toxic philosophies and ways of thinking, then nothing ever changes.
Yeah.
Kids deserve adults to be adulting.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the Me Too movement never happened, if we weren't allowed to speak out on stuff, it wouldn't create a better society. It would just leave all these people hurting and alone.
Yeah. Being silent about it, that's where the shame grows in the dark, and
Yeah, yeah.
the silence of not speaking up, not talking about the issues. So
I think it was either France or Ireland. Oh, it was in the news and I can't remember. They put these boxes where kids could there's like a movement about, there's things that we can't speak, hurts that we experience that we're not allowed to say out loud. And
mm,
so they put these boxes out that kids could write down what happened to them and put it in there. And
oh,
like the amount of abuse that kids experience that are never talked about blew them away.
is this in schools or just like in places?
Around town, I don't know if I think they had some in
Interesting.
schools. And it was
Interesting.
part of a project. But yeah, if you
Interesting.
can't say it, write it.
Interesting. Yeah. And then for them to see how many kids are telling
Yeah.
stories. Ugh. It's too big of a problem. Oh my gosh, something has to be done. But
Which all comes back to like her saying to you, like, if you're not a member anymore, why are you talking about it? Doesn't have anything to do with you.
yeah.
If you were abused and hurt by something, you're allowed to talk about it. And the more we talk about it, the better, because kids are still
Yeah.
being hurt.
Yeah. So, okay, so I have a list of things that, like on our last episode, you had a list of things that the church has to do. This isn't really a true list, but there are some things, I have some ideas, okay, for the church that would probably increase the respect I have for them and could go a long way to making them look a little bit better, I guess. Oh, there was an article in Salt Lake Tribune, I think yesterday, about they had done a poll about how people viewed different religious groups, and Mormons were at the bottom of the
I
list.
saw it. Oh.
Okay, so this goes along with that of like, here are some things that the church could do to make themselves look better and to make people respect them a little bit. Okay. Number one, turn all their temples into homeless shelters and feeding and housing the poor, for feeding and housing the poor. That's the first thing I think that they could do.
I don't think that's too far-fetched. Like, because it makes me think about how Jesus was on, that was one of my favorite stories, was when Jesus was on the steps of the temple.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like, if you don't pay, you don't get to play. Like, it is a 10% to enter.
Yep. That would show that they were actually following Jesus, right? Feeding and housing the poor. When, in what circumstance are they ever doing that? Like, it's, anyways, so that's one thing they could do. If they took all of the quorum of the 12 out and put all women in charge. I'm laughing because I know that's just, it's dumb, but if they put women in charge, I feel like this church could be in a better place. If they would give away all of their money, if they gave, because even in the scriptures it talks about this, you know, Jesus talks to somebody, they say, you know, what more can I do? And he said, sell everything you have and follow me, right? If they gave all of their, you know, billions of dollars in cash and real estate away, like towards ending world hunger and poverty, towards, you know, clean water for the whole world, towards, you know, I mean, they literally could change the entire world.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they do that?
Stop building temples in poverty-stricken places. Take that money and help them.
Yeah. It's so,
because the amount of money that they put into the temples is kind of it's kind of a mixed emotion, because I do love architecture and I love the artistic side of human nature, and there's something to be celebrated for beautiful buildings. But when those beautiful buildings are used to separate and divide, they're not so beautiful anymore.
Yeah, totally. When they are used as a, you know, it's a private club that only those who give them money can go to, like, that's a problem.
Like,
and
if they were taking all that money that people gave to enter the temple, if they were taking that money to feed the poor and house and change and help protect the planet and the people,
that would be
it would
something
look different. Even if it wasn't a building for everyone, it was a building for the worshipers themselves. But taking the money that is required, not necessary, not needed, but required to enter, and donate all of that to the poor.
Yeah, that would at least be something, right? They could even keep all the money they currently have and just start donating every penny that they bring in.
That would be something. It's just gross.
Yeah. It is. It's obscene.
Yeah.
When you see, have you seen the pictures of like the temple in, I believe it's in India, and you see like this gorgeous temple and all the surrounding like villages are like, seriously, like people live in huts. They are absolutely in horrible poverty. And then there's this gaudy, obscene, ridiculous building in the middle, and it just feels like it's a slap in the face, kind of like, what the hell? These people don't even have electricity and running water, and you have $1 million chandelier hanging in your $1 billion building. Like, that just doesn't even make sense. It doesn't compute. Like, what if they could take that money and actually serve that community?
They could start with the indigenous communities in Utah.
Oh my gosh, right? Yeah. The indigenous communities anywhere who are still living in horrible circumstances without running water and stuff. Like, just a few miles away, there's a big god-awful temple. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I agree, there is beauty in a lot of the temples, are very beautiful, but I don't know. Now I struggle when I see them. I don't see the beauty anymore.
Because they don't lift up the community.
No, they don't. Even if there is beautiful architecture, maybe I need to try harder to, you know, appreciate that, but I can't, like, it's lost.
Well, that's why you can't
Yeah.
is there it just represents
Yes.
a lack of understanding, a lack of
Yes.
self-awareness. Even if the architecture is beautiful,
Totally.
what it's representing is completely oblivious to
Yeah.
the people that are getting hurt
Yeah.
around them.
Just total privilege and ignorance.
Yeah.
It really
Yep.
is. Yeah.
Like it's no different than what's happened in Hawaii and New Zealand.
Mhm.
And yeah, just
So gross.
yeah. So the last thing on the list for me
Yes.
was the LGBTQ community, which I think is the biggest one because that's the one where I know you said, you know, people hope that it's going to change.
Hmm.
I don't see it ever changing, ever.
Yeah, because I think that it would threaten the patriarchy. It's connected to that too closely. Yeah, I think that's the hill they're gonna die on, is marriage has to be between a man and a woman.
Hmm. Hmm.
That it's God's plan. I don't think that I agree with you. I would love I would love to see that change. That would be, I think, a great change. Would it make me go back to the church? No.
No. Because I don't, the lying.
Yeah, there's too many other
Lying for the
things.
Lord, lying in lesson manuals, lying in, yeah. Mm-mm. I also had stuff like marijuana on my list because I
Yeah.
find it very double standard to have such high prescriptions given
Mhm.
out in Utah for all these other things, but
Oh,
to not acknowledge more natural healing. Like,
100%. I can't even tell you how many people I know that are, addicted to opioids, addicted to ADHD medication. Like ADHD meds, it's like essentially meth.
mhm.
And I'm not against medication when it's needed. Okay. I'm not against that. But the problem I have is the double standard. Like just like
Yeah, yeah.
like why, when plant medicine has been proven to be so helpful and healing and beneficial in like a huge wide array of ways, why is it so demonized? But it's perfectly fine. You can get a temple recommend if you are addicted to opioids, but you cannot get a temple recommend if you smoke weed. Tell me how that makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I wonder, do you think that they would ever change the word of wisdom?
I think that'll change possibly. But instead of like making more space, they changed the rules in like the islands for oh, I can't think of the word. Is it the drink? The drink kava. That's what I couldn't think of. It's
Okay.
just like a traditional drink. And it's not alcoholic, but you can kind of get relaxed drinking it. Okay,
Is
hang
it a
on.
plant medicine that's in it that would normally be against the word of wisdom?
They've made it against the word of wisdom there. This is brand new. This is like last
Oh,
year or the year
shit. Are
before.
you serious?
Yeah, it's like a tea. It's just like a tea. And so people that have traditionally used it, if they're Mormon, they're no longer allowed to
Now they can't use it.
join the traditional ceremonies or family occasions. Yeah.
That's insane. I could see them loosening up on the word of wisdom maybe a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see, because I think like now they just don't have an argument for why tea and coffee is not okay. Like they really don't. Because anything they say could also be said, well, what about Coke? What about
Do you remember when it was a huge deal when BYU got like Coke
yes,
machines in?
yes. When they started carrying caffeinated drinks, when
Mm.
President Uchtdorf talked about how he drinks Diet Coke at General Conference, like everyone was like, oh, no way. Like, it's okay now. Like, how insane is that? It's
Ah,
so the temperature of your caffeine matters, apparently.
yeah, yeah, no hot drinks, no hot cocoa, no
Yeah.
soup. That's why I'm not getting back together. I like soup.
Oh, I like all the hot
I
dogs.
also do not eat meat sparingly. I
That's
definitely
true.
like meat.
That is true. You know what? I had this conversation with my bishop. I said, the word of wisdom is ridiculous. Nobody actually follows the actual word of wisdom, like word for word. They follow these key points that we always talk about, like, nicotine and coffee and alcohol. But we don't talk about the eating meat sparingly and the, only in times of famine and cold or something like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I said that to the bishop. I'm like, it's such bull crap. Like, nobody's following, and like the what they talk about grain, and it talks about a whole bunch of stuff. I bet if you ask somebody to tell you what's in the word of wisdom, all they would know about is the hot drinks and the that stuff. That's all they know about. If you actually read the word of wisdom, you'd be like, what the hell, nobody follows this.
What else is funny is the whole eating meat sparingly thing.
Uh-huh.
When Mormons first arrived in Utah, they overhunted and overfished everything
Yes.
to like oblivion. Like there is no
Yes.
sparingly.
Right. Which is what caused the natives to have such problem with their food. Then they were starving.
Yeah, and if they came and killed a cow, then they were actually killed themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Ooh, don't even get me started about that.
No, we're not going down that.
But yeah, you're right. The whole word of wisdom is such bull. It's
And even like the drinking, like when I found out that Joseph was still smoking and drinking in Nauvoo, I was like, what? Like, why did they even have it?
yeah, he was literally drunk when he died. They brought some kind of liquor to the jail for them because
Yep.
stressed and they needed to calm down. Yeah. No. And then, I mean, Brigham Young had distilleries in Utah. Hello. It didn't end with Joseph Smith. They were still.
Yeah. And
and
that was one of the things that I read in the Journal of Discourse too. They'd talk about what they had in the meeting. Like, what?
isn't it insane? It's insane. The double standard, it's so weird sometimes to think about how we got here. Like what happened. I think like we think, or at least I always thought, like this is the way the church has always been. This started with Joseph Smith, but to actually read all the history and see how it's evolved over time is really crazy. It's like how we got here with like those super traditional family dynamics that were taught. That wasn't until like what, David O. McKay, like, right? Like
the shame I would have if we didn't have family home evening.
oh my gosh, right?
I was like, I'm the worst mom ever.
Yeah, no, I genuinely, like when my son was 14 and kind of like leaving the church, that's what I was thinking about. Oh my gosh, we didn't do family home evening enough. I teach my son well enough.
Oh, speaking of teenagers,
Yes.
I'm so glad I didn't get to this stage. But one of the big ones, never, the early morning seminary.
Oh,
I'm like, no. There are kids here that wake up at 5 a.m. and teenagers need more sleep than
they need more sleep than that.
my
They're not
kids.
going to bed at a decent time.
Well, even without that, even if they go to bed on a decent time, they actually physically need more sleep because their brains are changing so much at that stage. I forget how much that I've read with like I stay up to date with like all the development stuff with kids, and well, I used to. Obviously, I don't anymore. I'm like, whatever.
They're just gonna do what they're gonna do.
But I watch our friends that are like getting up at 5 a.m. and going and doing seminary and then going and doing school, and they're like doing their extracurriculars after, and they go home. Just we give some rides and just zombies.
How are these kids even functioning?
I don't know. I cannot imagine.
It's
like even when my kids go to bed on time, they're not going to wake up. Yeah, like it's just
I don't want to wake up at 5. So why would I expect my kids to do that?
Yeah. So I that would be a reason I'm not getting back together because I enjoy my sleep. And I want my kids to sleep.
Sundays, glorious Sundays. Today's Sunday.
And Saturdays,
actual rest day.
Yeah.
Rest day. Sundays, I look forward to Sundays. Sundays, like the best day of the week for me now.
Yeah, yeah. And it felt amazing, crazy when I first left, but I was like, oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. It was like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. We call it second Saturday now, but even that feels, because it is different than Saturday. It's
Mhm,
more
mhm.
of a calmer day. I don't feel like I have to do as much. Like Saturday still feels like a busy day where I need to get a lot done. And then Sunday, I'm just like chilling. It is the nicest, best day. It's so great.
No more pantyhose,
Oh my
tight dresses.
Yeah. I quit wearing pantyhose like 20 years ago, though. Yeah, those were such a problem for me. I freaking hate them.
Oh, they're the worst.
Yeah, they're the worst.
No more
Also,
fast Sundays. No more
yes. Oh
starving
my
until.
gosh. Thank you. Fasting was the worst part of Mormonism ever. There was a time when I literally was like, my testimony is not strong enough for fast. I was the worst faster ever. I faked it.
I loved it when I was pregnant because I could eat
Oh,
and
yeah.
not feel guilty. I was like,
Juice.
oh, pregnant. I don't have
Yep.
to fast.
Or breastfeeding. Or
Yep,
breastfeeding.
yep.
I can't fast. Too bad. So sad.
But I do miss some of the wild like testimony meetings. There's something to be said for that, right?
It's oh, what does my brother call it? Oh my gosh. Open mic Sunday.
Open mic Sundays, yeah.
Yeah.
There would be
And
some really nice ones. Like I would be moved by some people's,
yeah.
but then
Yeah.
there'd be the wild ones where I'm like, what did they say about, like there's this one guy. My dad was on the high council, so we travel to
Oh,
different wards for him to like visit and speak at or whatever. And one fast Sunday, there was at this branch, this guy got up and he was talking about a snake that was talking to him, and like, really, I was like, what?
no.
What is this? Uh,
Dude, we always had like in my ward, we always had the same people get up every time.
mhm.
And you knew when they were getting up, you're like, oh, here we go. So yeah, but there were some like you look at each other and you're like, what is happening right now? I used to love those days. Yes.
There's times that I wish I could go back and be like, no, don't get up. Don't get up, Sarah. Stay sitting. There was
Uh-huh.
once my mom and sister were visiting, and my mom decided she was going to share her testimony, and she grabbed my sister and drug her up with her and made her stand there.
Yeah.
And so my mom shared hers and then made my sister share hers. Oh my gosh.
And this was at your home ward as an adult.
Yeah, as an adult. I
Yeah.
think I'd had my second child or something, and so they were visiting, but
Yeah. I remember one time my dad visiting my ward, and we've talked about my dad. My dad he's the nicest guy, but man, he's just so embarrassing. It was an adult. I think he was visiting because we were blessing our baby or something. But he got up and bore his testimony. He's like, "Hi, I'm her dad," and I'm just like, oh, so embarrassed. I'm so
see,
embarrassed.
that's why I loved it. Like
Oh,
you never knew what was gonna happen.
yeah. I think I have too much of an aversion to like awkwardness that
Oh,
I always love it. There
I
were
think it's
certain things
funny.
I loved it, but yeah, oh yeah, it was,
But then I'm always like on the outside of things, laughing in,
yeah.
like it's not me experiencing it.
No, I
Um,
experienced secondhand shame. I'm ashamed
yeah.
for the person up there embarrassing themselves. Oh, I can't do it. Were there any other things that you didn't get to share that you wanted to share? Or I think,
I have one more.
okay, go. Yes.
Bishop's interviews.
Oh,
Never getting back together. My kids, it is so disrespectful to children. Are you kidding me?
yeah, it's so
Never.
bad.
Never. Okay,
Oh,
that's
yep,
it.
yep,
Tacos
yep.
and margaritas tonight.
Yes, let's do it. Yeah, the bishop's interviews and I've actually had that thought multiple times as we've been talking about different things where like you feel like you have to get permission from the bishop for things. When we're talking about the word of wisdom, I have a friend who she was on some like diet thing and she was required to drink coffee and she went and asked her bishop if it was okay and if she could keep her temple recommend. That's bullshit. I've had
And it's also like bishop roulette. You could have one bishop say
yes,
yes and one say no.
correct. Correct.
Not even from God.
Yep. I know people who have asked their bishop if it's okay that they have a vibrator.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No.
I was just like picturing asking a bishop and like
Uh-huh.
that's awkward, which
Uh-huh.
obviously I found funny.
Uh-huh.
But like,
Yeah.
what?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my
Someone
gosh.
I know very well who got a vibrator and then she felt guilty about it. So she went to her bishop and asked him if it was okay. And he told her, yes, it was okay.
Oh, good.
I bet you that he was like, dude, stop talking and get out of my office. I don't want to know about you and your vibrator.
No, at least she got a decent person.
Yeah. But
Because
why the
like
hell
that's
is
so
she telling
personal
why
and
is she telling her bishop this shit? Like, for reals. Like, the bishop thing is so bad. Why do we feel like we need? I mean, how many times did I go into my bishop to confess that I was, making out too much with my boyfriend? Like, how freaking stupid is that? I
yeah.
felt like I had to. I felt like that was what I was supposed to do. You're supposed to ask permission. You're supposed to ask forgiveness. You're supposed to, clear everything through the bishop. Is it okay if I, do this or that? Like, it just is so gross now. So yes, that's a really good one.
And like understanding that it's just people with zero training, and then understanding that everything you tell them, they can choose to put on your permanent records.
Yes.
And they'll just follow you. And they can choose not to put it on there.
Uh-huh.
Like the fact that they have so much control and that children are exposed to this without even understanding the ramifications. Yeah, I think it comes back to conformed consent for me on that too.
Informed
Like,
consent.
oh yeah. What'd I say?
Conformed consent.
Informed consent.
Is that a thing?
Wait, what?
Your consent is conformed.
Yeah, informed consent, because like kids just don't know that's going to follow them. And like even your friend, I feel bad for laughing. Like I honestly feel bad because she was just in this like sweet trying to be a good member, but I felt really uncomfortable. Like it was that awkward feeling like, oh my gosh, it's so uncomfortable.
Well, she's an older lady that's divorced and you know what I mean? So
I love that she got somebody decent that didn't shame her for it.
Yeah.
But understanding that they can put stuff on your permanent record and you move wards and somebody reads through it all.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
you kind of love to see what your permanent record looks like?
No. No, I have no desire to see that.
I think if you go and you have your records removed, they should send them to you. Like send you your official file that has everything. And I don't know, it might be really traumatizing, but
yeah, for me it would be. I don't want
morbid curiosity for me. I want to know what the bishop wrote down about me.
It would probably make me angry.
Oh yeah,
like that.
Yeah, it probably would. Did you remove your name from the records of the church? Have you done that? You have.
Yeah, that was like 6 months after we left.
I haven't.
My husband couldn't wait. I panicked a little. I admit I panicked, even though I knew I would never go back.
Yeah.
It was a hard final step.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why I haven't done it yet. I'm definitely never going back. I don't know. There's part of me that wants to wait until the perfect time to make a statement. Now, granted, that's all about me. That has nothing, the church doesn't give a shit when I remove my records. But for me, it feels like it has to be almost like ceremonious. Like there has to be something significant that happens, and then I will take that step. But I mean, tons of significant things have happened and I haven't done it yet. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm waiting for, honestly. But
yeah, for me it was realizing I wasn't Lamanite made me really angry that my grandma had already passed away. And some of the stuff I said defending the church. And I was just like, nope, I will have nothing to do with this. Like my name will never touch, be a part of being associated with being an active member.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's part of me that's like, I do not want them to be able to count me I do not want to be associated with them. But then there's also part of me that says it doesn't really matter. They're probably, whatever their numbers are, nobody actually knows. And whether they still count me, it doesn't, just I go back and forth of like, it really matters. And then, oh, maybe it just doesn't matter. I don't know.
I agree. And in some ways it's all pretend.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all this just pretend thing.
Yep. Yeah. There will definitely be a time where I officially remove my name, but
Yeah, I think if I would have waited, it wouldn't matter as much anymore. It mattered at the early stages as part of my,
yeah,
I was just mad.
yeah, making a statement and
Mhm.
yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm sure there's tons of stuff we could add,
I
but
know.
the bulk of it.
Yeah. I think we've covered the main parts, and it is interesting how interconnected everything is, like polygamy to patriarchy to, priesthood and LGBTQ issues and word of wisdom with, and then prophets and
And for me, every single one connects to kids.
yeah.
Every single one. And how it hurts them or lies to them or manipulates their emotions or growth or understanding. And I'm just like grossed out by it.
Yeah. Yep.
Like it's one thing if it's an adult, and that's where like we talked about if my kid's 25 and they want to join the church, I'll be like, well, okay, but let me just share these things with you and I'll support you.
Mm-hmm.
Because an adult can have informed consent, but
Right.
children need to be more respected. Yeah.
Totally. I have a nephew that's getting baptized this Saturday, and I'm just sad about it. I can't, I want to be supportive, and I actually can't go to his baptism because I'm going to be at Taylor Swift, but I would have gone.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone to other nieces and nephews' baptisms because I'm being supportive, but it also really makes me sad because I'm like, these kids have no idea.
Yeah. Well, and there's some beautiful symbolism with baptism.
Yeah.
With like Christianity. I still try to like give space for like different belief systems and stuff. Even if it's not my thing, don't believe any of it. But
the whole idea of like when you get baptized and you're washed clean and you're perfect, right? It sounds really beautiful on the surface, but what that does to a kid,
that's true. Yeah.
how long does that last to where they go, oh my gosh, I'm not perfect anymore. I made this mistake. I told a little lie, or I hit my sister, or whatever, like how quickly do kids go, oh shoot, like, do you remember thinking that? Because I do.
No, I think I tied a lot of my beliefs to Jesus, and because my family watched a lot of the older reenacting movies, I'd watch Jesus get baptized.
Yeah.
And like I thought about him, and then I thought it was fun. So I think with the whole having your sins washed away, I didn't really get talked to about that stuff. So I
Oh,
think for me, I just associated it with being like Christ and getting
yeah.
baptized like he did.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right, because a lot of people get the, oh, but you better not sin after this.
Yeah.
I didn't get that. So
And I don't even think that I got that particular message. You better not sin after this. But my brain went from I'm perfect right now because all my sins are washed away. But what happens when I make another mistake? Then I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect.
mm-hmm.
So that idea just was like, oh crap. Like I'm just, I'm like envisioning this. I was white and perfect, and now there's all these spots on me, and like I'm never going to be white again. And
Yeah, I think it depends on the churches or the
yeah,
religion's version of baptism.
yeah, for sure. For sure.
And maybe having a mom that was a convert, because moms do a lot of the teaching more, I think, than the dads usually. So
yeah,
maybe that influenced mine. But
yeah,
Mormonism does definitely have more purity
yes,
culture pressure. So
yes, to stay pure and clean. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. It's so fun. I just have to be a regular guest now from now on. Where you want to
come
talk
up with
about
different topics.
Yes, yes. Well, we basically chat almost every day anyways now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
We just have to plan to record our conversations.
You could like take all the blips from
Marco Polo.
Chop them all together.
We have talked about pretty much every topic under the sun. Anyway.
Well, this was fun. Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll have to do it lots more times. So
yeah, we got our list out, and I'm definitely like, I wasn't kidding. I'm definitely gonna plan on a margarita with like tacos tonight for dinner. I'm like, that's it.
That sounds so good. Yeah, that sounds perfect. Perfect. It's a perfect Sunday activity, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, awesome. Well, I will let you go. You also have a birthday party to get to today, so
Yep.
have so much fun with that, and I will talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy this content and it's been helpful for you, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. Leave us a review if you love us. And finally, if you can, I would really appreciate financial support in this work. You can go to dissidentdaughters.org or mormondiscussionpodcast.org and choose Dissident Daughters in the drop-down menu when you go to set up your donation. You can do a one-time donation, of course, but better yet, set up a monthly donation of even just $5. If you've left the church recently, you've probably experienced a 10% income increase. And here's a place where you can donate and know that you're supporting a fellow dissident daughter who wants to stick around and keep providing a supportive space for deconstructing our faith together. Thanks for all your support.